I am recording. Hello, everyone. It's Sleepy Reader here, back with another daily sleepy video. This time I wanted to talk about a Silver Age Supergirl. I've read a lot of Silver Age, well, a good amount of Silver Age stories in the past year or so with my daughter. I'm starting to get quite the feel for them. But this story in particular struck me as extra odd in a number of ways. So I thought I'd just run through the story, tell you about it, and see what you think. It's from a 1975 Superman Giant Family comic, but at least the Supergirl story is a reprint from sometime in the 60s. The copyright date is blurred because of the cheap paper or time or what have you. I don't know if the other stories in here, I haven't read the other stories in this issue yet. It's interesting that it's presented by Lois Lane, and I've seen other Superman families that are presented by Supergirl or presented by Jimmy Olsen, so that's kind of interesting. Um, but the Supergirl story, The Kiss of Death, is at least in part about marriage. So Supergirl encounters this man who gets married 3 times, and in each case, while kissing the bride at the altar, she dies. And the first victim is her professor, Vandar, who teaches ichthyology at Stanhope University or Stanhope College, where Linda Lee, alias, or Linda Danvers, alias Supergirl, goes to college. And the teacher announces, hey, this is my last day teaching because I'm getting married tomorrow. Which, that makes a lot of sense in and of itself. But Supergirl goes out to a junkyard, builds her an aquarium using her heat vision to turn, shape the glass, and then goes deep sea diving to catch all kinds of exotic deep sea creatures, which she then gives to the teacher as a wedding gift from Supergirl and all the girls at the university. Which should strike some people as odd also. Why is she giving a gift like that? And then people notice when they take a picture of the bride, it's all just a blurry shadow. And then we meet the groom, Count Dirkla, who looks kind of like a 1940s or 1950s movie star. He kisses the bride. She falls over dead, just like that. And again, if you take a picture of the bride, she's all a blur. Supergirl looks at her arm, and she has this strange, strange tattoo that gives off X-ray radiation. So that's quite a mystery, isn't it? Quite you would really never guess the reasons for all of this. And so then our next victim is this woman who does high dives, the old circus act of doing a high dive into a shallow pool, Dora's daring diving feats. And Supergirl helps save Dora when her board breaks, but that's really of no consequence to the story, except that it introduces them and someone notices her photograph's all blurred. Supergirl does her x-ray of it and sees an identical tattoo to the other woman's one. And then, of course, she ends up introducing her husband-to-be, her groom, and he's no longer called Count Dirkla, he's Colonel Dirkla. And Supergirl goes to the wedding, of course. He kisses her, she falls over dead. And then Colonel Dirkla flies away in his vertical takeoff airplane. Supergirl tries to follow, and Colonel Dirkla turns his airplane into a flock of geese, or makes it appear, even to her x-ray vision, that it's a flock of geese. So she can't catch him. But now she sees a pattern. There's this guy, he kills women with this tattoo, and they all have jobs that have something to do with water, she figures out. So she goes searching around for possible future victims, and she crosses them off her list. And finally she comes to this woman who is a a guide to the tunnel of luminous fish and exotic out of this exotic and out of this world, ironically. And so she gets to know the woman riding on, as Supergirl, riding on the what is it, the gondola that goes through this tunnel. And then she convinces the woman to come take her professor's job over, since they need an ichthyologist. And she literally lifts her up and flies her over to the university, where she becomes an ichthyology professor. And with her out of the way, Supergirl creates a fake tattoo and sticks her arm into this cryogenic fluid that Superman happens to just have in his Fortress of Solitude. So that, why did she do that? So that it will stay on her skin, I guess. And then she takes over the woman's job, working as a gondolier on this tour. And of course, the Dirkla fellow shows up, but now he's a sheik. And he invites her back to his place, where he's so rich he can afford special effects to have people flying around on flying carpets serving him. And he has his own private planetarium, where he basically seduces her and asks her to marry him. Just like that, first date. And she says, sure, give me a kiss. And he says, no, I can't kiss you until we get married. So then they get married and he kisses her. And he actually kind of stabs her with this ring, or some chemical comes out of the ring, and she pretends to die. And she uses her, I forget how they describe it, but she uses some superpower to make her heart and breathing stop. And then he is all happy and removes his disguise, and he's blonde underneath, which I guess makes him more alien. And he reveals the whole story about how on this underwater world there were these 3 women who were vicious jewel thieves who were always killing people. And they were captured and sentenced to death. And he, Dirkla, was the executioner. And the way they do the execution is they put these tattoos on the girls and tell them, I'm going to come back and kill you in 3 days. And you can't escape me, because these irradiated tattoos will tell me where you are anywhere in the galaxy or whatever. They escape from jail, fly off in their ship, and decide to hide out on Earth. But then Dirkla's track them down to Earth, back to Earth. So I'm asking myself, why does this executioner need to marry these women and kill them on their wedding day? I mean, what does that mean? Is that the way you have to execute them? And why wouldn't he be willing to kill her and execute her before the wedding day? But he will only kiss her and kill her on her wedding day. So she takes this woman who she rescued, who didn't get killed, away, and asks her about all this. And she says she was innocent and people are blaming her for the crime. So Supergirl's going to tuck her away in the Fortress of Solitude, where Dirkla can't find her until she's safe again. I guess they put this little thing over her tattoo so he can't locate it. But then as soon as Supergirl's gone, she starts stealing jewels and starts to sneak out the door of the fortress. Supergirl figured that might be what's happening, and so catches her. And then she, I think her name is Valere. Valere walks across the vat of cryogenic fluid instead of walking around it, perhaps. And because she knows that Supergirl's going to bring her back to this Dirkla guy who's going to kill her. And she falls into the vat of cryogenic fluid and it kills her. And she brings the body to Dirkla, and he's happy now. All the bad guys have been killed and he can go back to his home world, a successful executioner. And then finally, in the final panel, Supergirl comes back to college and finds out that one of her other friends is engaged to be married, and Linda is being invited to be one of her bridesmaids. So first of all, this reminds me of my mom's stories of college, when she went to college in the I guess it would be the mid 50s, that women were really talking about getting their MRS, and she went to a quite academically strong college in New York City, and everybody would talk about who got engaged, who was getting married. People would leave college when they got married, and at the graduation, the president of the college, who I think was a woman also, it was a women's college, told everyone who hadn't gotten engaged yet by the time of graduation not to give up hope. So that was part of the graduation speech. So for college girls in the 50s and maybe the early 60s still, marriage was, the pressure to get married was huge. So that somehow reflected in this story. But like I said, the whole idea that there's this executioner who has to kill you while you're getting married. I mean, obviously that's not what he did on his planet before. And the bizarreness of this tattooing and then waiting 3 days to kill them. I mean, none of it makes any sense, but DC prided itself on every story being this sort of clever mystery. So to create these clever mysteries, they have to create these utterly bizarre situations. And Supergirl wants to make sure the girl's not innocent, but beyond that, she has no problem with the idea of the execution, and she never questions the morality or behavior of Dirkla, and just the bizarreness of him pretending to be a rich sheik and a colonel and a count, and also the similarity of his name to Dracula. It just all seemed really bizarre to me. You know, what kind of wacky juice was the writer drinking? Otto Binder, who's a longtime DC writer, I believe, and also someone who was involved in the golden age of pulp science fiction. You can probably find old stories by Ian Doe Binder, which is, I forget, it was Otto and his brother writing together, and his brother's first initial was E, so it was E and O, and they called their name Eando. And you can find those stories in a lot of golden age anthologies of science fiction. But anyway, that's an aside. Just wacky, illogical stuff to create this mystery. And what does it say about the position of women and the obsession with marriage and the fear of marriage? And I don't know. I really don't know. But I just thought it was crazy. So anyway, that's my video for today. I will be back tomorrow. Gabba gabba hey.